Hola mis brujas, ¿cómo están? Otra vez aquí nos vemos. How are we doing? I told myself I was in need of a social media break, but here I am once again talking about race because I just can't help myself. I ran across a very interesting interview with Erykah Badu, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you. I recently participated in a much needed online Zoom event, a sapphic space for women of color. And I was glad to have had the opportunity to sit with my Black and brown sisters in a gender critical space and discuss all kinds of issues. And while I was sitting there talking to these women, especially as it relates to feeling censored around topics of self-ID or gender critical topics, or even when it surrounds our lesbian culture, a lot of Black and brown women, I sometimes forget there's still a lot of us that are still in the closet. While in this space, we talked about how the gender critical discourse online, the activist panel of online discourse is very much still being led by white feminists, white women, and people of affluence and means. From what I've seen in the online spaces that are meant for feminists or that have feminist discourse, the main voices are mostly Western white women. And that's okay, honestly, because from my point of view, I also understand the issue with self-ID laws are, as I've said before, a first world problem in the scope of disparities that affect people in the world. The women in Mexico, for example, who face feminicide, I mean, these women are getting offed at alarming numbers still, and this is something that the government there is overlooking. So women in these countries, for instance, that deal with that gravity of male violence, such as literal death, they would probably tend to look at our Western society's preoccupation maybe with the topic of self-ID. And it's not because they wouldn't agree, it's just that there are more pressing matters. There are still cultures that haven't really been attuned to really the severity of this and the flagrancy and the abuses that we're seeing with self-ID. But we should keep in mind that that doesn't mean that they wouldn't agree. It's just not a part of their industrialist structure in which they have to contend with their socioeconomic place in their specific country. So keeping that in mind, I sat there and I thought to myself, it seems like the presence of Black and brown women here in these spaces where most of the participants tend to be American white women or British white women. So even amongst the feminists here, the gender critical feminists, TERF feminists, or just people that converge here and analyze gender critical discourse, we are still very much a minority. I myself have experienced, as I've said in other videos, some kind of isolation and alienation in these spaces too, because I'm always going to bring a brown perspective. Brown people have a unique vantage point, especially Chicanas, Latinas like myself, as you can imagine, who embody that mestiza essence where we are hybrids and are able to see and acclimate equally into our culture and see things from that vantage point, and also are able to live in and embrace and even sound and speak the American vernacular. The values that we place on color have made it that way, have made that argument now split into people like me who I can acknowledge that I do receive a lot of advantages and privilege because of my skin color, and perhaps also because I was acclimated into American culture by participating in it for half of my life. Topics on race have interested me from maybe that slightly removed vantage point where I can try to see both sides and try to see really what the issues here are, and really just try to see the root causes at play that continue to cause so much resentment and miscommunication and misinformation between white culture and Black culture. For those not familiar with Erykah Badu, she's an okay singer. I mean, she was kind of really famous in the 90s because she came out with this really cool vibe, like Earth Mother Goddess, and I was digging it. She had a couple of really cool hit songs. I don't know if I would find it exceptional, though my wife might disagree because she's like the one that loves the genre of neo soul, which is what Erykah Badu is considered, a neo soul artist. And it's, you know, it's very sensual music, very sexy music for those British feminists out there who are not acclimated. But, you know, I've sort of kept in her loop with some interest because, you know, I like to follow Black artists, especially the ones whose music I've enjoyed. She went off on Twitter when she said that women are mothers and that there were natural women. That pissed off a lot of Black women, and she was considered transphobic. So I sort of went on a tangent there, but back to the sapphic space that I shared with Black women recently. It really dawned on me as I was sitting there listening to these women that in these predominantly white feminist spaces, the presence of even brown and Black people will be looked at as woke. I recently had a falling out with a friend who really just kept weaponizing this word woke, like just this Latina woman who is heavily acclimated to white culture and says a lot of really anti-feminist stuff. Actually, she seemed to consider everything that was brown culture, Black culture, it was just automatically woke. I would talk about literature and art from, for example, the Harlem Renaissance period, and it was just like too woke for her. It's been very obvious to me that white feminists and Western gender critical people have been overusing and abusing the word woke. And in some of the contexts in which I've heard this word, it really has sounded like they're really saying them, like the others, the Blacks and the Browns and the Latinos. I love talking about the Mexican culture a lot because there's just a lot of ironic, crazy shit that Latinos do. It's like a whole different Latin vibe being Chicano. So we have these really crazy attributes to our culture that definitely need some decolonization. And so sometimes, you know, I like to think that I can still poke fun at my own culture and talk about it and bring it into feminist discourse. And it's just not welcomed very easily. Even talking about race in general gets me called out for it and gets me accused of falling for all the race mongering, which I definitely don't. I would pretty much like all of us to just like get over race, because globalization, we're getting all blended. It doesn't really matter. What is human value? Here in the gender critical space, even bringing up rudimentary things about one's culture, like our customs, our traditions, seems to automatically make some people think that the whole room's just got woke with wokeism. It really needs to stop. And I think that it could stop with more understanding and more learning. I didn't know that Erykah Badu, the R&B neo-soul singer, was where this word woke originated from. Check this out.
But we did start a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah.
There's a song on this particular album called Master Teacher. And in that song, Master Teacher, the chorus is, I stay woke. So stay woke was introduced to the world by way of this album, New America Part 1. And I tweeted it about this group that was detained, Pussy Riot. They're this group of activists who are artists. And in my tweet, I said, free Pussy Riot and hashtag stay woke. After that, woke took off.
Now, I want to stop it right here, because the band that she is referring to in this tweet, Pussy Riot, is a Russian performative riot girl extension of a lot of the principles and the styles of the riot girl movement that was a white Western feminist offshoot here in America. The riot girl movement is definitely interwoven in my philosophies of rage feminism. And it's something that I want to talk about in another episode in the future that I'm working on. But for now, what you need to know is that Pussy Riot is a postmodern group. They're very big Judith Butler devotees. Erykah Badu, I think, here was just trying to do them a solid and sort of promoting the activist work that Pussy Riot was doing at this time. And I believe that a lot of it was talking about the anti-abortion laws that were going on in Russia. So let's get back to the video. This is actually a relatively short part of a larger interview that I will be leaving the link in the description box too, because you should really check it out. It's a pretty good interview. Badu here is about to talk about what woke really means.
Your art
Yeah.
took this concept, ideas and words can evolve, but it really put this out, this idea we should wake up to these problems and stay woke.
Sure.
We track how you started it and how it spread, and then how some on the right are sort of hijacking or attacking it or giving it a different definition.
Sure.
So I want to play this for you since you bring it up, and then we could talk about it.
All right.
Even though you go through struggle and strive to keep a healthy life, stay woke. Everybody knows a black or white, there's creatures in every shape and size. Stay woke.
Stay woke. Yeah. It's just urging folks to pay attention, to be alert.
Stay woke, baby.
Wow.
I want my culture to stay woke, but I want the other cultures that's supporting us to stay woke.
Woke fascism that will destroy our nation.
We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
I think they mean black. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another way to say thug or something else, right?
Yeah. And how do you feel about that?
It is what it is. It doesn't belong to us anymore. And, you know, once something goes out in the world, it takes a life of its own. It's an energy of its own. I can tell you what woke means.
Please.
It just means being aware, being in alignment with nature. Because if you're in alignment with that, you're aware of everything that's going on. And it's not only in the political arena. That means with your health. That means in your relationships. That means in your home. That means in your car. It means in your sleep.
Even in these spaces, no one really knows what it means. There's really doesn't seem to be a fixed definition for it. And I believe that it has been misused in the way that Erykah Badu here explained. It's just another word to other people from ourselves, especially when we don't approve of something that they're doing. But I think it's just really important to keep the origins of this word that we just sort of throw around in our spaces.
I can tell you what woke means.
Please.
It just means being aware, being in alignment with nature. Because if you're in alignment with that, you're aware of everything that's going on.
I really love that, the word alignment. Not too long ago, when I was sitting with the Black Panthers and I was listening in on a very inspirational speech by the head of the Black Panther Party here in my local chapter, this is a theme that was brought up there too. Harmony, alignment, being attuned to ourselves and staying healthy, both psychologically, mentally, and physically. These are the things that most matter. Staying on top of our health. And I think now more than ever, having a sense of survival, because this world is getting really crazy, y'all. The crime in big cities is just, it's unreal. And I see it more and more. It is very apparent on social media that, you know, we sort of want to go at each other with our different opinions and beliefs, okay? But this is why it's so important to stay focused and observe the collective reality that we all need to contend with. We have to avoid doing things like making shit up in order to communicate with one another. The Black Panthers are very community focused, and they have that mentality that you can't serve your community. You can't be a good villager to the village if you are not operating from a healthy perspective yourself. This means decolonizing, uncluttering, avoiding all levels of toxicity, toxic people, toxic ideology, things that will affect our mood swings and make us perform poorly as parents or in our jobs, things that keep us from fulfilling our purpose, from giving the best that we have. During the Black Panther meeting, I really loved how they kept coming back to the home, to the homestead. And this is something that I'm still in the process of doing myself and struggling through this, as my home and my home life, it's so important to me. It's important to me that I be a good parent. It's important to me that I provide my wife the support that she needs and that she's getting the kind of love and attention from me that she needs without being stifled. I don't know, it sounds like all these things that Erykah Badu is saying in this interview are really turfy. Staying woke means being alert to the world around you, to the realities of the world, to the realities of our bodies, listening to our bodies, listening to new challenges outside of ourselves that could hurt our bodies in new ways, listening to those icky feelings that we get when people enter our lives and they just bring with them drama and turmoil and depression and sadness that they want to inflict at you. Listening to that voice in our head that says, you know, this is just not right and I don't need to tolerate this. I don't need to accept this. Staying woke is about focusing on things that make us healthy, make us whole, and make us feel human. And I just don't think that when it comes to transgenderism and self-ID laws, I don't think that those things would even qualify as anything that's healthy or good for our bodies. Transgender ideology is a very nihilistic culture. It's a cutting cult. It is constantly urging people to question their bodies and to want to modify them with extreme surgeries. This is not body positive. If somebody that you knew with a psychological distress was using cutting, for example, to process or numb the pain that they were feeling emotionally, you would not enable that. You would very much discourage them from doing that because you would see the scars that will lead to pain, will lead to permanent damage on their skin and tough memories for them to process at a point where they're feeling better. You would not enable somebody to want to cut their bodies up and still convince them that they were making a healthy and pro-body decision. As to the people that come into a gender critical discourse or a TERF discourse, radical feminist discourse, please understand that we can start to analyze now with new information that we have on the origins of the word woke. We can start to maybe try to understand how we've used the word woke and what we're really trying to infer when we use it here. I am a total bandit in this myself. I have used and abused the word woke myself. As a matter of fact, I call my wife woke since I'm now analyzing this, given new information that I just learned about the intent of the word woke. I'm analyzing the reasons why I've called my wife in particular woke. And I think what I'm just really trying to accuse her of here is just being hyper altruistic to the point where feelings do trump actual facts. And I just personally don't agree with that. We do get into arguments about certain topics because I have this mentality that you should be honest no matter what. I think what people really mean to say when we say woke is that we see things maybe too rosy colored and we've become idealists to the point where we're messing around with fantasy and make-believe and real hard wishful thinking that we want it to be reality, but it's clearly not going to be reality. But we're still pressing that political agenda towards fantasy. That's what I have taken for woke. That you've just sort of given up on the garish world and the horrible details of it and have checked out. Anyway, that's enough of that. I really just wanted to bring this really interesting interview out and share it with you guys. I really want to know what you think. How have you used the word woke that differs from what you know the origin is now? I'm really enjoying the discourse on some of my latest videos. Thank you all for your feedback. Let's keep these discussions on race and sex. Let's keep them going. This is how we get to learn from each other. And you know I'm always here for a debate, girl. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.